The world of Kingdom Hearts is actually one built out of many. In fact, that's the entire selling point of the games, getting the chance to explore some fantastical Disney worlds in order to live through curtailed versions of everyone's favorite Disney movies. However, while these worlds are plentiful, they are also separate in ways that almost don't even make much logical sense when all is said and done. Now, while this separation is something to be hand-waved by the games from moment to moment, the lore of the series does confirm that all of these disparate lands used to all be a single world, and various hints imply that this unified world was once Earth. Not only because we visit places from the real-world Earth through the series, like London, Paris, and Atlantis. Additionally, some maps, globes, and other descriptors from various worlds continue to imply that the unified world was at least some form of Earth, with all of the various worlds we visit all being a part of this Earth. So then, while we know of some of the real-world parallels for some of these locations, others still remain a mystery, even today. Among these many places, the Destiny Islands still stands as a unique spot that is grounded in reality, and separated so thoroughly by the ocean around it as to throw in oddity around the idea of the worlds separated out into space, or an archipelago of islands out on the sea. So, with all of this strangeness of the worlds and the basis of many locations being grounded in the real Earth, is it possible to find Destiny Islands? Howdy, and welcome to DevBox, where today I want to dive into the history of the Kingdom Hearts series to figure out where in the world are the Destiny Islands. To start narrowing down where on Earth we should start looking, the most obvious way to determine where the Destiny Islands would be is to look at the language spoken on the islands themselves. Obviously, this changes from regional release of Kingdom Hearts to regional release, so being someone who grew up playing the North American release myself, it wouldn't be too out of left field for me to assume that Sora and friends all speak American English, and therefore they might be somewhere around Hawaii or the Caribbean. Granted, we see the Caribbean with Sora, and given how he simply does not belong there, we can safely assume that is out of the question. However, this is a dead end anyway, because the original language of these games is Japanese, which we could easily consider to be the canon language, since this is the original release of the game, with the localizations into other languages being little more than translations for our sake. To bolster this idea of Japanese being the primary language the denizens of Destiny Island are meant to speak, there are two pieces of evidence. First, there's the fact that in the most recent trailer for Kingdom Hearts 4, from what feels like 10 years ago, Sora is seen to be in Tokyo, specifically the Shibuya ward, and very naturally speaks with the people who live there. Whether we're considering this real Shibuya or the world ends with you version of the town, this is still in Japan, and therefore, if Sora can talk to people here without there being a language barrier, then he must know Japanese. Although, I will note that this evidence is somewhat flimsy, considering that Sora has seemingly had no problem speaking to people from ancient Greece, China, and Paris, regardless of what their original dialects should be. Instead, let's look at another piece of evidence from the development of Kingdom Hearts 3, with the lack of dialogue from Phil in Olympus Coliseum. As many fans of the series know, this character, who has appeared in previous games and given speaking roles before, is played by the late Ichiro Nagai, who unfortunately passed in 2014, between the development of Birth by Sleep, the previous game that Phil appeared with a speaking role in, and Kingdom Hearts 3. Because of this, the Kingdom Hearts team decided not to recast the role out of respect for Nagai, and therefore did not give any speaking lines to Phil. It's actually a bit of a controversial stance among some Western audiences, however, as the original Phil in Disney's Hercules, Danny DeVito, as well as the voice actor for the character in past Kingdom Hearts games, Robert Costanzo, are still working actors to this day, so the English version of the performance could have gone unchanged. Likewise, the English voice actors for series Big Bad Xehanort and Kairi had both been recast for Kingdom Hearts 3, with one of these having come after the original English actor, Leonard Nimoy, had passed. But given that the game is written for the Japanese cast, it makes sense that replacing the English cast isn't as critical of a decision for the team. So yeah, the Kingdom Hearts characters are Japanese, and therefore, original locations like Destiny Islands must take place within the territory of Japan. In this case, among the archipelago islands that make up the nation. With our general region narrowed down, another aspect that we can focus on is the placement of the Destiny Islands in the ocean. Specifically, we can look at the two islands that make up both the Play Island, where we start the first game, and the Main Island, where the cast actually lives. While most of the time spent on Destiny Islands is in the middle of the day, we do get a few cutscenes around sunset across all 3 numbered Kingdom Hearts entries. In the first game, we get several sunset scenes that showcase how the main section of the Play Island faces towards the west. Combining this with the way that the main island's beach looks out to that side of the Play Island, then we know that we're looking for 2 islands, one large enough to house a residential neighborhood and a school to the west, and another that is roughly the size of a football field to the east. There is a bit of an inconsistency here, as Kingdom Hearts 2 sometimes seems to show the sunset on both sides of the Play Island, but considering that we see the sunset from the front side more often than not, we're going to consider that the true west. This could also be a matter of the Kingdom Hearts 2 Twilight scenes taking place at dawn rather than dusk, since we're never actually given hard confirmation of the time for these moments with Kairi on the beach. Now that we have an idea of what we're looking for and where, let's continue to narrow down our options, namely with the naturally occurring wildlife we can find on the island. This includes both the flora and fauna, though fauna in this case is pretty much limited to 3 fish that we really don't get a good look at during gameplay, a seagull that lays the king of all eggs, and emo boy heartthrobs that you probably thought were hot when you were 13. I know I did. Still though, what we can see are the trees that are scattered across the island. They come in various shapes, generally emulating palm and coconut trees, all with large, wide leaves as we would normally find in tropical locations. One of the most prominent of these trees is the Satakensia leucinensis, more commonly known as the Satake palm. A long, slender palm tree with a stark white bark, exactly what we see on the island, where Sora can actually climb up to grab that seagull egg we mentioned in the first game. These specific trees are found on the islands to the south of Japan, including Iriomote, Ryukyu, and the Yaeyama Islands. To be clear, these are all in the same region of the southernmost end of the Japan archipelago, and simply narrowing down from island clusters to a single prominent island. Further narrowing down our overall search zone to these specific tropical islands in the southern section of Japan. Finally, there is the most iconic piece of flora on the entire island, the Paopu Tree. So, we can start by looking at the Paopu fruit itself. The Paopu fruit is based on the real-world star fruit, although it has been altered from what we know as star fruit here on Earth, and has applied the star-shaped cross-section to the overall silhouette of the whole fruit. Star fruits in the real world grow on the Avarhoa carambola plant, which grows primarily in Malaysia and Taiwan. However, this plant isn't exactly a one-to-one for the actual tree we see the Paopu fruit growing off of. This looks a lot more like the Satake palm. Although, even then, we're still a little bit off. This tree is a bit too thick and bendy in order for these to be of the same genus. Of course, that doesn't mean that there isn't a tree somewhere in Japan that could account for this unique shape and structure of trunk. In fact, there are several national parks that could act as a pretty decent example of where the structure of these trees could come from, like the mangrove forest that can be found in Iriomote Ishigaki National Park. So, at this point, we've selected a few islands that could fit the mold, somewhere in southern Japan, deep in the tropics where the Satakensia could grow, somewhere near enough to either Taiwan or Malaysia that the starfruit could ideally grow, and finally, somewhere that has a primary island large enough to house the small town we see in Kingdom Hearts 2, but also has a smaller island offshore large enough to house the play area we visit in Kingdom Hearts 1, which is also close enough that a handful of preteens could ideally make the trip on personal rowboats without being swept out into sea, or tiring out on their way there. Our adventures would be over quick if we started off with Sora, Kairi, and Riku all being capsized by 30-foot waves before anyone even has a chance to pick up one of the Keyblades that's kinda lying around everywhere. This then leaves us with the perfect matching set, Kohama and Kayama Islands. Kohama Island is a small island that takes up about 3 square miles and is situated within the Yaeyama Island group, situated about 150 miles away from Taiwan. It is well within range for ocean currents, migration patterns, or even local trade to bring starfruit over to the main islands of Iriomote. Then for Kayama Island, this is a very small island only about 2,000 feet across from shore to shore that is situated to the northeast of Kohama and has a beach that looks out towards the west, perfectly placed to watch the evening sunset. So, there it is. We found a likely approximation of where Destiny Island might be in the real world, the Yayama Island group, with the islands visited in-game being Kohama and Kayama. In that case, if you're looking to raise your own Sora, Kairi, and Riku, then head down to southern Japan and start introducing them to short-range sailing to uninhabited islands off the coast. But be prepared for one of them to cast your entire world into darkness, and then suddenly you'll be completely wiped from the rest of the story for the next 2 years. Although it might feel like 25 thanks to all of the random hiatuses and spin-off adventures. Or don't do that. Instead, maybe get some sea salt ice cream and sign your kids up for local HEMA classes. At worst, you get a nerd who can properly appreciate modern fantasy. Hey, it's that time again. The end of the video, where I invite folks to come check out the Patreon. Link in the description. And make good on the rewards for those currently pledged. Patreon members get early access to new content and their names written in the credits at the end of videos. And those who pledge in the top tiers get their names read out, like our DevBox designers, Genghis Braun, and our DevBox developers, Azul. Thanks for your support, and thanks for watching.
Man.